Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so happy that you're a part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please continue to keep that beautiful family of yours safe. We have a wonderful guest for you today. Her name is Rachael Mann. She is the author of The Spaces You'll Go. And today we have a phenomenal conversation about digital literacy. I'm really excited we're able to have this conversation about digital literacy with Rachael. It's so very, very important, especially now when we're all inside spending so much time together, spending so much time online, helping our kids learn, finding great resources. And this is a great time to really remind them how to use technology appropriately and safely. Now, I'm also really excited that this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Big City Dance by Virginia Doherty. Mo Doodle is a country mouse who decides to move to the big city in search of excitement and adventure. Although he finds plenty of fun, he soon realizes that he is homesick and missing his friends. Told in bouncy rhyme and rhythm with incorporated dance movements for young listeners and readers, discover how Mo solves his problems while exploring and living in the big city. This book is ideal for children 3 years old and older. It's Big City Dance by Virginia Doherty. And now, through the magic of technology, we travel to Phoenix, Arizona to speak to the author of the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read book, The Spaces You'll Go, Rachael Mann. Rachael, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, Jed, for inviting me. I'm really excited about the work that you're doing and to be a part of your podcast today.
I'm really excited to have you here. The Spaces You Go is a STEM-based book. We love celebrating all things STEM and STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Tell us about The Spaces You'll Go, please.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so The Spaces You'll Go is a spin-off from the book The Martians in Your Classroom, which is a book that I wrote for educators and parents that I co-authored with a gentleman from NASA who is a former director of engineering for NASA. And in writing that book and seeing the statistics on the projected shortages in the STEM field and the importance of getting kids interested in STEM-related and STEAM-related areas at a young age, that's so important for them to be able to not only develop that interest, but also to see themselves in these different careers and to start even just in a playful way without even realizing that it's purposeful, to be able to start imagining themselves in that future of possibly doing something related to space.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that expected shortfall? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so within the United States alone, we already have a large shortage of folks that are going into STEM fields. But on top of that, the projections are worse because there's so much of what we see in the future, just the different problems that need to be solved, have STEM-related answers. And part of the problem with that even is a shortage in the education world. If you don't have an educator to teach the subject, then kids aren't going to be able to experience that. In a lot of cases, we have substitute teachers who are in the classroom because there's not a teacher. So, it's a broad problem. So we have to look at a lot of different aspects for it. But within my circle of control is inspiring young people to really start not only seeing themselves in these fields, but to know that they can do it. I think that sometimes when young people hear the word science, technology, engineering, and math, that's something that they panic. It just seems like something really hard, but it really is something that's very doable, especially if it's done in a fun, playful, exploratory, innovative way. And also changing that mindset from a young age to where when they hear the word STEM, it's not scary. I did use the word STEM versus STEAM just because the STEM piece is the shortage areas. Fortunately, we have a lot of people in the arts, but art is embedded into everything STEM related, art and design. And even in writing this book, my illustrator was just phenomenal and did such an amazing job with the art side of it. But so just focusing on the STEM piece, even though the broader piece is the STEAM piece.
You know, I guess when you think about it, it would be easier for us to sit down and kind of list the kind of professions that aren't going to be STEM related in the future, as opposed to trying to list the ones that are. I mean,
that is such a great point. Yeah, it really, and even my niece just enrolled in cosmetology school, and she's realizing how much science and technology and even engineering and the math piece, all of that is within cosmetology. So it truly is in all these different careers without folks necessarily realizing that they're doing STEM all the time.
And I think it's important too. I had a conversation many, many years ago with somebody who was and I was surprised because he was an educator. He's kind of bemoaning the fact that why are we forcing kids to learn math? I mean, we have calculators. They can just sit down, punch the numbers in. The calculator can give them the answer. The kids don't need to learn algebra. The kids don't need to learn this and that. And I'm like, even if that's true, don't you want the kids to have an understanding of what they're punching in and what the answers are? And I'm someone who was very poor at math and could have used calculators. But even the fact that I didn't love math and I didn't excel at it, I understood that it was important for me to have some kind of understanding of what was going on.
You know, and with that, if you think about I'll just use football players for an example. Football players, when they are preparing and getting their body conditioned to play on the field, they're doing all of these different exercises and different drills that they're not necessarily doing during a football game, but they're building those muscles. They're building that muscle memory, and they're expanding what they're able to do. And it's the same thing with our brain. But just by learning math and learning how it works and, just being able to really understand it, it's still expanding their capacity and thinking and really developing their brain. Regardless of whether they're going to use anything more than a calculator.
Now, what was it that inspired you to get into the field and to become an advocate for STEM careers, become an advocate to inspire kids to get into the STEM fields?
Well, I've always loved the sciences. I was as a culinary arts teacher I spent about 14 years teaching both technology and culinary. And I was fascinated by the science side of it. I would do the science of cookies and have the kids, do different experiments where they were getting to really play with science and, just in a fun way. They get to eat it afterwards. So that always adds a little bit of value to it. I've also always been fascinated by space. As a kid, my teachers, one of the biggest complaints that my parents would hear about me as a student was that I was a space cadet, that I always had my head in the clouds. I was always daydreaming. And I remember just spending hours sometimes. I grew up in the country in West Virginia and just laying out in the field and watching the stars and seeing falling stars, watching looking for the eclipse, learning the different constellations. So there was that side of it. But then I was after leaving the classroom, I was working at the Department of Education as the Ed Rising State Director, which is where I really started identifying the STEM shortages, because that's what the entire organization does, is to try to encourage high school and college students to pursue education careers, and especially in high and shortage areas. So I got involved with an organization called 100K in 10, which is an organization that was tasked with solving the projected shortage of within 10 years from the start of the organization till 10 years later, that there would be we would be short within the United States 100,000 STEM educators. Wow. So, some work in there. And then also, of course, getting involved with writing this book with the Martians in your classroom, that really, with tons of research and just realizing the importance of helping kids to decide to go into these career paths.
Now, I got to ask you, you brought up Martians in your classroom a couple of times, and this is a little bit off topic, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you think there's life out there looking at us?
I do. One of the biggest reasons that I do is because my co-author, who is brilliant and very involved in NASA, when I asked him, and this was before I even knew I was going to write a book with him. I was just interviewing him for a magazine, for a publication article. He did not even hesitate to say yes. And he does so much work in that area. But also the Martians in your classroom is actually referring to the students in the classroom, because the first person to step foot on Mars has most likely been born and could be a kid in the classroom. So it's really, and not only that, the kids are growing up in a world that's so different than the world that we grew up in. They might as well be living on another planet.
Well, it really is different. It's very different from the world you grew up in. I imagine it's much more different than the world I grew up in, because we were still taking dinosaurs to school. That's a fascinating topic, I think, just to talk to kids about, what do they think is out there? Just getting them to think that there's this whole universe out there that we haven't even scratched the surface of exploration yet.
Oh, yeah, we're really just getting started.
Yeah, exciting, really, really exciting. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about was you have done a TED Talk. And yes. I know we have a lot of authors and a lot of teachers who listen to the show. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy to. Another thing that happened when I was working at the Department of Ed in Arizona, I was tasked with training a group of high school students to speak in public, which was something that was not my forte. It was something that terrified me as a kid. And, I realized I was good at speaking to high school students and middle school students, but not adults. And when I realized I was going to be training high school students for public speaking, we started looking at TED Talks as a way to learn how to speak. So it wasn't just memorizing a script or reading from a script and looking up at key points. So I became fascinated with TED Talks. Actually, the name of my company is Teach Like TED, but I do business as Rachael Mann Consulting. And Grand Canyon University here in Phoenix, Arizona, decided to put on their first TEDx event. And I reached out to them and asked them if they needed any help with coaching, because this was a few years after starting my company and really seeing the benefit of learning the 10 different areas, such as storytelling, incorporating humor, and not talking too long, the jaw-dropping moments, all of these different pieces that make for great speakers. That was something that I'd been working with educators on, so I decided to reach out and see if they wanted help with coaching their speakers. So I was a TEDx coach that year, and the following year they asked me to do a talk, and that was at the same time that I was finishing up the Martians in your classroom. So I did use that as the topic for my TEDx talk, which was in 2 years ago, February of 2018.
That's awesome. Now, one of the things I noticed on your website is you refer to yourself as an edufuturist. Did I say that right?
Yes, that is correct.
We talk a lot here on the podcast about classrooms. My wife's been a teacher for 33 years, and she's been working in an inner city school system with special needs kids. She's seen a lot of changes over the years, a lot of changes that have been good, a lot of changes that have been kind of unnecessary. But what do you think? I think the one thing a lot of people agree on is that something needs to change. When the kids aren't getting, a lot of kids aren't getting the education that they should be getting. How would you change classrooms and the way we teach kids for the future?
Oh, there's a lot of things I would change. One of them would be not compartmentalizing the classes, really blurring the lines between content areas so that you're allowing kids to really see the interconnectedness and the purpose behind the learning. I would also allow for a lot more exploration and giving kids problems that don't have answers yet to them, or giving them problems that maybe you do have an answer to as a teacher, but not giving it away. Teachers are too quick to give away the answers and have kids memorizing facts. And yes, there are some things we need to memorize, but we've got to let kids really wrestle with ideas and come to their own conclusions. And that's really rewarding as well. So I think that would be a big piece of it, is just allowing it to be more exploratory. I think that I would also want to see a change in how we look at grade levels. Some kids advance at different rates in different areas. So not looking at grade levels so much as each individual student, individualizing education so that they progress at their own pace. Mm-hmm. This is a topic I can talk a lot about. But there's so much so much work that we could do. I think that even having a lot more combining the online learning piece with the in-person piece is something that we can do to make sure that we're getting the best experts into the classroom, especially when we look at the shortages in teacher salaries. But yeah, those are just a few things to start with that I think would help create some transformation. I just saw a post yesterday where someone is at a high school that has completely banned cell phones. And they were really celebrating that. And I get where they're coming from. It is important for kids to be able to communicate and talk to people in person. But they've just taken away such an important tool that is something that used to be military grade equipment. Mm-hmm. And our kids walk around with it and they can do so much with it. And when you take that tool away, not only are you missing out on a very valuable resource, but you don't have an opportunity to teach kids how to use it in a responsible way. Yes, you can have it out at certain points for certain things, but then how to also connect with the people around them. And then I even think about safety issues. It is pretty amazing that we're able to, that if a parent has an emergency or a family member has an emergency, that you're able to connect with them immedately in that way. Mm-hmm. But now I'm going off on a tangent. So,
well, no, yeah. It's a great tangent. I mean, that subject, the whole subject of cell phones, it's very frustrating for me because we've given, kids are walking around right now with the cell phone in their pocket that has more computing power than the building of computers that sent men to the moon.
Exactly.
But we've just given these things to kids without a real, without sitting down and talking to them about the responsibility. Hey, you have this thing that can send a picture around the world in a second.
Yeah.
I would have killed for that when I was a kid. I was into making movies and making, well, I guess they were like precursors to podcasts. We called them tape radio, and we would have conversations and we would share these things, and we would have to physically make copies of them and physically bring them from one person to another, from one school to another. Now kids have this thing that they can talk into their phone, hit a button, and now it's in Japan and China and India simultaneously. But we don't teach them the responsibility that goes along with that. We don't teach them, if you don't use this resource, this powerful tool in a proper way, these are the consequences that you could experience. And that's frustrating. And it's frustrating that school, kind of just, it sounds like they've thrown their hands up in the air and goes, well, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Right. And then it was interesting to see how many people were commenting that they want that for their school. How can they make it happen? I'm like, oh, I'm going to end up spending a whole day if I start commenting on these because this isn't right. But yeah, digital literacy, online safety, those are things that need to be a part of curriculum, not just a standalone, but within those are opportunities when you have kids using cell phones. And it also means making sure that the educators are well versed and that they know all the different dangers and hazards, and that downloading TikTok onto your phone could be downloading an espionage tool,
right. Yeah.
To allow our country to be spied on. But you're also that whole concern of you could end up not being able to get accepted to a school or not getting that job because of something you put out there. And it could affect them so much later in life, even with other personal connections that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Future spouses, their children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we were really lucky with my kids, and my I've told this story on the podcast in the past. My wife was very, very protective of our kids, and I was kind of frustrated with my son when he was in middle school. He wasn't taking a lot of initiative, and one night at dinner, I said to my wife, I said, when Chris goes to high school, he's going to have to take public transportation by himself. And this look of horror went across my wife's face. She was just terrified. And I said, but we'll get him a cell phone, so he'll be okay. Uh-huh. And she said, yes, tonight. And so, whoa. But we did. But I had an experience right after both kids got their cell phones. It was around the same time where I was learning how to remake my website. I had a company make my website for me when the kids were babies. I had lots of pictures of them at my magic show on that website. It was a very expensive process. It was very expensive to change anything. I finally learned how to do it myself, and we got rid of those baby pictures that the kids were kind of, didn't like anymore now that they're in middle school. And just one night, I just happened to stumble on those pictures that were still out there on the internet.
Oh,
and I sat down with them and I goes, guys, I don't have that computer that we created those pictures on. I don't have those pictures anywhere on any devices that I own, but they're out there online, and I can't do anything about that.
Wow, what a powerful lesson.
And so, my kids very early on said, yeah, we're not going to mess with pictures. But kids aren't getting that message, and it's so important.
I did a presentation on building your brand and just talking about the power of social media, but also the importance of curating your own brand, that if you just decide, I'm not going to do anything online, then stuff's still going to be put out there. It's just you're not going to be the one controlling it. Mm-hmm. And a board member who was in the audience, she came up to me the next day and she said, I thought that there was nothing about me on the internet. I don't have any social media accounts. I don't have, I thought there was no reason that if I looked up my name, that there would be something on me, but there's all kinds of stuff, stuff from races that she had ran, from the different board meetings, different events that she had attended. So it was just a wake up call that, we have to teach them how to not only interact responsibly, but also that, yes, they need to be the one that's, kind of controlling that content.
Yeah. Now since you're so passionate about this, do you have any ideas to create a kid's book that will address some of these issues?
Oh, I think you just planted a seed.
Yeah, that was my intention.
That's a great idea. I have two more children's books that are going to use the same characters of Cass and King of Blue, that I'm hoping both of those will be done, at least one of them done this year, possibly the next one released the following year. One is going to be The Things You'll Grow, and that's going to focus on like the future of agriculture, looking at drones, hydroponics, and just different things that are transforming agriculture. And then The Things You'll Code, and getting kids interested in computer science and coding languages at a younger age. But I love that idea of something that you and I can collaborate on in the future, right?
I'd be more than happy to help you with that.
All right, awesome.
Now, I love those two subjects that you're going to tackle, the things that you'll code. I love that idea of talking about the things that you'll grow and talking about agriculture. I'm, city guy, and I know that things grow. I know that they don't just pop up on supermarket shelves, but I'm still fascinated when I learn about agriculture. Over the summertime, my wife and I were down in Costa Rica, and we saw a banana plantation, and it just went on for acres and acres and acres, and I'd never seen anything like it, and it was fascinating. And we also have a young person in our lives that recently graduated with a degree in agriculture. And he is fascinated with one particular plant, and one plant in particular. And I have learned more about that plant in the last year than I ever thought I would know in my entire lifetime. But it's searching both of those areas are I think could be really fascinating for kids and open up a lot of doors for them.
Well, and I had, when I was during our book release and book signing at a Vision conference in Anaheim back in December, as folks were having me sign their books, I had multiple people comment on the space farmer in the book and how there aren't books that are related to agriculture. And there were a lot of FFA and agriculture teachers who were in the audience because it was a career tech ed conference. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. If there's not a lot, then we need to have that as a way to inspire kids, because that's, there's such a huge future. We always need food. Yes. Food shortages is something that's a huge problem that folks are working really hard to create answers to. So I think that getting kids interested in that side of a STEM career as well is important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I'm really happy with where I am in life right now, and I feel so blessed. And I never really spent a lot of time thinking about, it would be so cool to be a kid right now. But if you were a kid and you were looking out and you were daydreaming, what kind of career do you think you'd be daydreaming about as a 7 or 8-year-old Rachael Mann right now?
I think it would be about space. I think that it would be about space exploration, or a career, whether it's here on Earth or the space exploration piece. Mm-hmm. That was something that I loved as a kid. But at that time, I didn't even know that was a possibility for me. I grew up in a rural area of West Virginia where as a female, your options are, or what you're told your options are, is either being a stay-at-home mom or a school teacher. And I think back to that, and I'm so thankful that I went into education. I absolutely love what I do, but I could see myself even possibly teaching an area that was that was more of a space focus, aerospace, or something that was a little bit more space focused.
Awesome. I think we could talk forever. You mentioned online learning, and that is a big passion of mine. I love it. I think it is a great wave of the future, and it is a way to address some of the shortages that you've talked about. But unfortunately, we're running up against a shortage of time here. Tell Rachael, please.
Well, I just want to point out that there is no shortage of time. Time doesn't run out. I just saw a YouTube video of this. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and it was a physicist. I have no business listening to physicists, but he was talking about there's two types of gravity. There's the kind that we're familiar with that draws you in, but there's also a repellent gravity that sends you out at with incredible force, and that just kind of blew my mind. So, but yes, I've heard that the time doesn't run out; it's on our way and all of that kind of stuff. But but before whatever waves around us, where can folks connect with Rachael Mann online?
Okay, so my social media handle for Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook is at Rachael EDU, RACHAEL EDU. And you can also go to my website, which is rachaelmann.co.
And that's important. It's .co, it's not .com.
Yes, there's another Rachael Mann who's a beautiful singer, and she has great content, but it's not mine. So she has that handle, but yes, rachaelmann.co.
Awesome. Well, we have had a great time, I think, speaking for the first time with our new friend Rachael Mann. Be sure to check out The Spaces You'll Go. It sounds like a great addition to any family library. Rachael, thanks so much for being part of our show.
Oh, thank you, Jed. This has been fantastic, and the last 30 minutes went by so fast. Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Katie Burke. She is the author of Urban Playground. It's a really, really fascinating book about what kids think. What kids think about living in a big city. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a great children's book, you're probably a little bit frustrated, a little bit nervous. all of your live events have been canceled. There's no book signings. There's no storytime readings at a library or at a preschool or at a school. It's a really difficult time to let the world know about your book. Well, one of the things that may help you is our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. This program brings your book to a panel of evaluators who are kids, parents, educators, and if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read, just like Rachael Mann's book, The Spaces You'll Go. And with that status comes a whole lot of tools that'll really help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. Check it out today. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Author Services button at the top of the page. You can find out all about it, or you can speak with our author ambassador, Peggy Cotto, at peggy@jedlie.com. And Jedlie is spelled Jedlie, Jedlie.com. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Rachael Mann. Please be sure to check out her book, The Spaces You'll Go. Also want to thank my amazing team. I want to thank Fatima Khan, my producer, for all the work that she does for the show. Also want to thank our author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. Also want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, I want to thank you. This is an incredibly difficult time. The first time humanity has ever had to experience anything like this. I know we are going to get through this together. Please continue to love each other, and please continue to know how much I value your support, how much I appreciate you being part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family, and how much I thank you for helping the world, to help to make the world a better place with your love. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.